Yes, I was.
Time.
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, we're going to be learning about that. The book looks good. Reclaiming Childhood. I love the title of that book. When did it come out?
2003.
Okay, it's relatively recent. That's good. And welcome very much to Conversation. It's a great pleasure to welcome to the program William or Bill Crain, and he's a professor of psychology at City University of New York, and he seems to have a great interest in childhood. And I know he's had a long interest in the university, the open admission policy they had then, and other issues. And Bill, welcome very much to Conversation.
Well, it's nice to be here.
My pleasure. And as is my want, I wonder if you could share your own background, born and raised, educated, and then we'll get into a discussion of the human condition, particularly looking at the eyes of the children, I guess. But we'll talk about things the way you see it, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was born in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And we lived there in East Los Angeles till I was 10. Mm-hmm. And then our family moved to Anaheim, which still had orange groves in those days. And
right.
while I was in junior high school there, they were building Disneyland. It was under construction.
That down near Santa Ana?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
It is right next to Santa Ana.
Yeah. Orange County?
It's Orange County.
Orange County.
Very conservative.
Yeah.
In fact, when I graduated from high school, in my senior year, I gave a speech against McCarthyism. McCarthyism was still alive and well in Orange County in 1961,
wow. Yeah.
and actually was investigated by for a speech I gave at the American Legion Boys State.
Really?
Yeah, I advocated
I
there.
have a list.
Right, I advocated abolishing the House of Un-American Activities Committee.
Thank you very much. That was a good idea.
That was my bill, and I got investigated. They came to see if I was part of the Communist Party or whatever.
Good for you for making a little trouble on that score.
Hey,
we got a long way down the line toward fascism. It seems to me,
it's worrisome.
In the early 50s, yeah.
It seems like maybe it's coming back in this area of heightened security and where the president eroding the freedoms.
Yeah. I taught 1 year at the University of California College's Long Beach.
Yes.
Which was in that territory.
Yes, it's right next to Orange County.
Yeah, and Mr. Reagan was in Sacramento. We made a lot of trouble. It was 67, and we did a big demonstration. It was Vietnam. Remember, Vietnam was so much a thing, and we made a demonstration on art censorship and so forth, and closed the university down. So we made a little trouble out there that way. So I think we may have some leanings in the same direction.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, but where did you go to school?
I went to Harvard. Went back east, as we called it, in the West Coast, and then I went undergrad, and I majored in what's called social relations, which is a mixture of psychology, sociology, and anthropology.
That's getting over toward comprehensive.
Yeah, interdisciplinary. That's right.
Yeah.
And then I went to the University of Chicago for my doctorate, and that also was an interdisciplinary program at Chicago. In human development it was called.
Human development within psychology.
It had psychology and child development and adult development, but it also looked at the growing person from the biological and social perspectives, as well as the psychological perspective.
We're talking now in the second, and this Sunday they're going to have Wilson, I think, on C-SPAN. There are 3 hours social biology, consilience, and that. And he's going to be 3 hours talking about his thing. And he's got a new book out called Save the World or something like that. But it's an interesting take on the human condition. And you studied at Chicago in psychology, took a doctorate then.
Right, and we had some biology and sociology. Once again, even though my focus has always been psychology, I never ran a rat through a maze or really did much with. In fact, now I've turned very sympathetic to animals.
Yes, I understand.
Later years,
I can remember coming up to Harvard. We used to go up and make programs. I remember doing Mr. Skinner, B.F. Skinner, there at the same time. I think it was the same trip we did one with another luminary at Harvard was. Galbraith, John Kenneth Galbraith.
Yes, he was
a great gaunt ectomorph.
Yeah,
he was a great fellow.
Yeah, he had kind of left when I got there.
Yeah,
he was, but he was a very impressive figure and quite a character and
I remember doing
quite a wise man.
Yeah, oh yeah, really wise and everything like that. And Mr. Skinner, I remember talking about, I think he had written a book called Beyond Freedom and Dignity.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes, and what a great title in a certain sense. It was funny, that kind of thing. And I asked you when I said you're a psychologist, you can be, it's almost as variegated as politics or economics or something, psychology, because you can be all the way from, you know, rats through a maze, behavioral psychologist, Skinnerian, all the way over to Rollo May or Carl Rogers, eclectic humanist. You're more on the humanist side.
Definitely, definitely.
And there's a big difference, I guess, within the field, and you can still be called psychologist, but a very different take on human nature and human consciousness.
Yes, it's whether you believe that human organisms have some creative capacities and freedom to express themselves and need that, or are they just the products of environmental control?
Or chance and necessity,
right?
Some monad thing.
And my orientation is if you give children the chance to grow and trust children, that they will grow well. And in fact, they will flourish if you give them opportunities. They need much less control than most people think.
This situation with all the testing and whatnot.
The testing is driving. I've spent years against that. It's driving me crazy.
Me too. I mean, just from a distance. I'm not involved directly, but
I've spent years fighting that. It's
good for you.
When I spent 9 years on it. I ran for office we lived in Teaneck, New Jersey, and I got elected to the Teaneck School Board, and I spent most of that time trying to see what I could do to ease the pressures that were mounting on children from the standardized tests.
Thank you.
Yeah, the test-driven education has just made children miserable. It's made learning a terrible experience, a scary experience. The kids are so scared that if they fail these tests, that they're going to get left back. Some think they're going to jail if they fail the tests. It's just very punishing.
Yeah.
And it's cheapened education. It's made it really narrow and boring and anxiety-producing. It's this test-driven education is ruining children.
It seems that way to me. As I look at it at a distance and everything, you know, my kids are all grown and everything. I got grandchildren now.
Yeah, very good.
So I just told you I was visited by these 4 or 5-year-olds, and boy, I tell you, they're just so gorgeous, and kids are so beautiful and everything. And I don't know, it used to be in Dickensian days, they had this strict notion, or I suppose you remember, I never liked school very much because I was always very autodidactic, involved and so forth. I never liked it very much, but they used to have it with these school, they would cane you, and it was, and you had to learn all those damned irregular verbs, all of which I've forgotten, and that sort of thing. And there's certain things that people seem to think that it's essential that you learn certain things in a prescribed way as part of what they call a discipline, and it's necessary to do that. I don't know what it is that we really have to learn, in that kind of way. You have prerequisite things you have to learn or something, but everybody in every specialized field thinks that everybody has to understand all the nuance within their field, and it can get pretty daunting when they're trying to push that off on somebody who's really not perhaps interested in it.
Right. I think that learning is much greater when you start with a child's interests or the student's interests. Give them a chance to pursue their interests.
Or the person's interests.
The person's interests. It's better phrase, a person, because a student is a kind of a narrow role. It's you're always dealing with a full person in education, with emotions, fantasies, feelings, creative capacities.
Within a certain social, economic, political
context. With a cultural background.
Right.
You're not just dealing with somebody who's going to memorize what's in the worksheets.
There's a lot of people want them to do just that.
Just focus strictly on getting the material that they need to fill in the bubbles correctly for the tests.
That's right, and then that's training them to fit. So a lot of people think that's training them to fit into an essentially authoritarian, quasi-fascist structure of our corporate entities, or our institutions are that way, often seen that way.
They learn to reproduce the answers that the authorities say are correct.
So that they're doing what they're told.
They're doing what they're told.
That's the overall generic purpose of it, is to teach people to do what they're told by an authority figure in the minds of many. Rather than educate, like I think it means to draw out.
To draw out.
Does it not? I think the etymology.
That's true. That's very true. That's the old Latin is to draw out, and nurture is another translation. But you have a child with a capacity, like they show an interest in say of great concern to me is a child's interest in the natural world. They like to pick up stones. They like to look at insects.
Do they ever?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They like,
and curiosity
the
about
curiosity
everything. It's just rampant.
is intense. And
is that true right from the womb? I mean, I understand that there's learning that's taking place early, prenatal almost even, that there's a learning process that is going at lickety-split speed, that they're doing it, and there's a curiosity right from the beginning, and the early imprinting of thoughts and so forth are really important. Those early months even are very, very important beyond what people realize, perhaps.
Well, that's very true. I think in terms of the natural world, it starts to peak up, starts to get going around 1.
Okay.
They start to discover dogs. If you watch somewhere around 12 months, I noticed they just they discover a dog and they just beam and they want to hug them.
Yeah.
And if you watch a toddler at the sand, how they pick up sand, they feel it for hours. They will play with and sift through it.
And they're learning like crazy.
There's something mystical in sand, and their attention span is enormous. And animals, of course, they continue to be fascinated by animals.
Yeah.
In fact, they're good defenders of animals. I used to go testify, still do, against bear hunts and deer hunts, and often you'll have 6 or 7-year-olds get up and look at the adults who are proposing a bear hunt or a deer hunt, and they, like, you adults are crazy. They say, how would you like to have somebody shoot at you? What are you doing here shooting these animals? They really are advocates, or trees too. Why? How are you going to cut down the trees? How would you like somebody to saw you?
That's interesting because that's over in the vegetative world. That's really good.
But they have this empathy for the natural world.
Empathy's a really important human characteristic, isn't it?
It is.
Muchly underrated by a lot of these control freaks.
Right. And then somehow of
which there are many.
There are. And somehow we teach them not to care so much. They learn it's not so cool to be digging in the soil, and then once again with all these tests, how are you going to get a high SAT by playing in the mud?
You could be over here figuring out how to take another test.
Yes, and so everybody's got their eyes focused on the future and their kids getting into the Ivy Leagues and the schools.
I think it's just a Dickensian. It's almost ugly. And
terrible.
I mean,
they don't appreciate the stage itself, the wonder of that stage. The child is just so, like you say, so full of curiosity and creativity. They make things
and they have a penchant. I think a lot of people have a penchant for they think they're doing well by keeping the eye on the ball of practicality, and they're worried that if you just go off, down a yellow brick road to do some sort of thing, that you really got to build your career. You got you got to get in. You got to get the merit scholarship. You got to get all this stuff, IQ tests, all this kind of thing.
The push for early academics.
And structuring everything.
Yeah.
Some people, from
they
607, we're going to do this, and they structure everything.
The schools
and there's no time to go out. We used to go out, and they say, well, you go out, what'd you do? What is it saying? I went out, what'd you do? Nothing. But they're out playing,
they're out playing.
Yeah.
Thinking, sitting under trees, looking at clouds, wondering what's behind the universe.
Yes, maybe,
wondering where we came from.
I mentioned that.
Who else is in there? Do I have a twin out there?
Right. I mentioned that thing to you too, and I don't have the chapter and verse on it, but it was this thing, a bunch of psychologists, or a group of psychologists, and it's very, in my mind, subjectively very valid that there were people who studied the state of mind or of consciousness, a creative stance toward the world, and they came and they said that it peaked cross-culturally across the world at 5. And then it goes down from there. And then if creative stance or creative relationship to the environment is something to be valued, it's sometimes the arts get very short shrift and so forth, and everything. But it goes down. There's other values. But that's the thing that I found very interesting. And the 5-year-olds seem to me to be, lots of times I've said it on the air, they're, I think, my favorite human beings. Maybe I'm prejudiced. I just got visited by 2 about that age of my grandchildren. But you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Does that make sense to you? And
there's a lot of 5 is a peak for make-believe play, 5 or 6, and there's a lot of literature.
And they're honest. What the quality I call it is honest. They have practically no artifice.
They don't. They're very direct, and
then they end up like us.
They end up like us, watching what we say, trying to please the authorities, try to fit in, don't say anything that's going to cause too much trouble. and like what everybody else likes, you know.
Seems to be. Is there a biological DNA thing written into the way we develop?
Well,
And how closely can we understand in terms of human development, the characteristics that seem to be, because they had that thing that was cross-culture across the world.
There's something called the 5 to 7 shift.
Okay.
But there's a lot of research backing that, supporting that. At around 5, a child is more prone to fantasy, more creative, more emotional, wondering. It's a period of wonder, and by 7 or 8, the child's more rational, logical, down to earth.
Starts coming in.
Yeah, and that shift seems, of course, that could have to do with the effects of schooling, so it's not clear.
Well, I was going to ask if that is a connection or not.
Yeah, but it seems to occur across cultures, and it's.
We do have a maturation system.
Yeah, it does, but I think organism. It is. I think it has genetic roots. Is that the child is more artistic. In fact, between about 5 and 7, their art becomes so good, their drawings become so good that it looks like they're drawing like great masters.
Yeah. You don't have to tell me. I just had my grandsons visit, and that's up on the refrigerator.
If you want a card, if you want a a birthday card or a Christmas card or something, ask some 6 or 7-year-old draw you something, and it'll be beautiful. You can be sure of it. Right. They're beautifully balanced and lively and fresh.
Well, we see that if we see there's a playfulness. We see it in young animals. I mean, a bear cub or a puppy or a kitten or something. They have that kind of quality. Maybe it's built into the maturation or the genetic process.
It may be partly anyway. Imaginary companions. About half the kids, maybe more, have an imaginary companion who they practically think is real, but they seem so vivid to the child. And then by about 7, they disappear, or go underground, and they don't talk about them if they have.
And that will emerge. You study psychology. Yeah. That will emerge whether or not they're in a schoolroom, where that is like following Mr. Bush's test. They put all that
That's
aside
a good question.
And follow the test and the school itself, and you have to learn certain things, and the parenting elements in their life are thinking they're being responsible to get them practical, so they'll be able to eat.
There's all this pressure on academic achievement to get them ready for the workforce, to get them ready. It's getting much worse.
It's worse.
Kindergarten, which was once a playful entry into school, is now very much like first grade. It's much more academic. Kindergartens often have homework, so the kids have little time to play. When they do go home and they finally rest, they probably just watch TV nowadays. If you outdoors, there's research that kids outdoor, the time they spend outdoors is something like 30 minutes a week in free play outdoors.
We used to be outdoors all the time when we
were
kids.
There is, that doesn't count, structured adult-directed games like soccer and Little League, but just the free play.
I'm almost of the opinion it shouldn't be allowed. They should only have pickup games you can get at the corner.
I agree with you.
Instead of having all these adults. And then the adults get all wrapped up in who's going to win.
The adults are playing the games.
Yeah, right.
Or the kids are like little.
Leading, it's a projection, because they're leading their life through the kids.
They are. They're out there
and
coaching.
They're corrupting the kids in order to follow their own kind of notions.
The kids are acting like robots. I got sucked into it and got into Little League, my first one. And
How many children you have?
We have 3.
Yeah, all right, yeah.
And
how old they are? I don't mean to pry.
They're grown. They're all grown.
Yeah, right.
They're all grown. The oldest owns an inn in the Adams Morgan section of Washington, D.C. It's called Adams Inn, and the second one is a cardiologist at Providence, and the third, our daughter, who's the youngest, is in her mid-20s, and she's in veterinary school in Minnesota.
So they're all developed in Minnesota,
University of Minnesota.
The bridge went down.
Right,
it made me think of The Night the Bed Fell. James Thurber wrote that story, The Day the Bridge Fell. Right. My daughter just arrived there. She's going to go to the University of Minnesota and teach. And so the day she arrived, the damn bridge came down. It was a little bit upsetting.
Something.
Well, the thing, but these are all questions. Mr. Spock. When we were raising our kids, it was everything was Mr. Spock, Benjamin Spock.
Yeah.
Do you think he had a good take on things? And what do we have? There's a fellow I mentioned now.
Brazelton. T. Barry Brazelton.
Spock was very permissive.
He basically was. He tried to.
And some people think that spoiled the children. People who are disciplinarian and get your nose to the grindstone, that kind of thing. Whereas we were very just permissive and let them do whatever it is they wanted to do.
It's rare to
make have a lot of coloring books or a lot of things you can do, a lot of opportunities, but don't try and.
I think if you give children the opportunities to explore and pursue their interests, you'll see them developing discipline. When they get interested, really passionately interested in something like drawing, you'll see them work at it.
I think that's good for any human being, if you can, to keep the curiosity and the passion
I
and
think
involvement from inside.
Definitely.
It's like an interior, not an exterior devoted stimuli, but it's a.
You don't drive them from without, right, precisely.
I think that's important
you
for
let
any
them
human
flourish.
being to be
We
able
value
to
our curiosity and our creativity.
A lot of people don't. Because that's just called a hijinks, or you're making trouble, or why doing? Just do what you're told, and we'll tell you what to do. That kind of a control freak kind of attitude
get the answers.
is intrinsic to our institutional structures.
Right.
The corporate structure is that way. You know, even you know what I'm saying. So you're going to prepare the people for the real world. Be realistic.
Even the academic world, you're
the provost
you're coached how to get tenure early on. Don't say anything that's going
to
to upset people.
Faculty meeting? I mean, it's like it makes politics in Washington look like duck soup. I mean, who's going to be provost? Boy, they'll fight like demons.
They'll fight.
Over that
You think it's the most important thing in the world. But,
and they'll get all exercised about that.
But they're trained like.
So they're training children to fit into a world
and they keep
that is not
them.
a very good model.
No, it's.
What is the model we?
The model is conformity and to go along and.
Practicality.
Practicality. They
money.
say they want. To create the kind of workforce that will compete, to good workers that will compete in the highly technological world of the 21st century. That's the phrases.
But I wonder if the really good workers are not more, if I may, maybe the good workers are the people that are creative and on the cutting, it's actions at the interface between special, is the person who is like really being directed, running down that thing themselves. That ability to be self-motivated is one of the things that's going to lead to your people that are going to be really creative, engaged in terms of the world.
Well, I don't know if your political system wants that.
Okay, well, that's another question. But I'm saying the people will emerge are people that are inner-directed.
No, if you look at...
And with a sense of purpose and a sense of direction.
You look at really creative people.
You ever see a guy painting? I've got a lot of artist friends. You cannot pull him away from that easel.
That's what people...
When he's doing it himself for himself, and that's something worth thinking of, paying attention to.
That's a very important point. That's what is hard to get across to people. People assume that you have to discipline the child or discipline the adult from without. But the stronger kind of discipline comes from within. Like you say, a painter who gets absorbed, you see the intense concentration.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to tell them to concentrate.
Right.
Keep your mind on your work.
They're like a hound dog after
You
a
have
fox.
to tell them, would you please come to dinner?
Right.
And they don't even hear you because and that kind of discipline, they work and work. And a kid will do that.
Now, is it the same kind of discipline? Do you ever notice kids watching television?
Boy,
they become entranced with that thing when those...
They are, but watch afterwards how they're restless, they're out of sorts, they're like sleepy.
So their absorption in the television is
kind of a passive, sleepy absorption.
It's a passive accept.
Yeah, it's not the creative absorption of the artist.
So. Okay.
The artist or the kid who's really absorbed in something and is building their own personality through their work. Afterwards will be rested, happy, and serene, and you'll have they're kind of natural. They feel happy with the world. They come out like. After this intense work,
they
come out like they've had a good night's sleep, and they're friendly to everybody, and they're rested. Usually because they had a chance to. Maria Montessori described this.
Montessori schools, they're good, no? I think
they're good. They had a chance to develop something in themselves, and I think when you watch an artist who's, worked through something and created the product, that they're rested afterwards. They feel good. But watch a kid after watching TV, they're restless. They're kind of dull. They want to know what else to do. They're bored. They're not. You have to watch how they come out of it. That's an indication of if a child is developing well, they will be kind of inner. They'll have an inner peace, and generally they'll be happy. Kids today who are pushed around by all the tests, the parents, the schools.
Oh, and don't forget all the athletic things you have to do on a schedule. And
most kids are grouchy, vaguely depressed, angry. There's discipline problems in kindergarten now. Of course, you're not letting them fulfill their inner potentials, like to play. And play is very important. And
I think life should be play. I never liked school.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be up late reading something, and then you go, and then they're trying to make you concentrate on what they're saying. They think you have to learn what I'm telling you.
School's never been. We never liked it, but now it's what they're doing. The hours are longer. It's more intense. They're putting much more pressure on. We didn't like it, but we had free time afterwards.
Not enough free time.
No, but the homework now they have almost none.
I used to look forward to the summer vacation.
Now they go to
get the heck away from it.
Now they go to academic camps, to computer camps, to structured programs in summer vacation.
It's like the behavioralists have taken over.
They seem to have gotten control.
Too much so.
And then somebody who can't think, who's just used to giving the answers that the authorities want, as I say, is not going to question authority. And you see that you have a nation of sheep. That's the problem. How long it took this country to start questioning the Iraq War, for example.
They still are going to. Mr. Petraeus is going to come back and say we got to stay there.
Hopefully, people will see through this.
You remember Vietnam? It was 65, or it was against.
Well, that was a generation.
And then it went till 75, and they're dropping napalm on the people, and they kept doing it, and they could just keep things going, reifying the old situation.
People did protest. The generation did protest.
Well, yeah, we also got 58,000 troops over there and 3 to 4 million people killed on our watch.
Spock was blamed.
And nobody went in the dock for that.
No. Spock was... He was accused at the time of having raised this generation of protesters.
That's what I was saying. Yeah, making trouble.
Yeah, troublemakers.
With the system. And the 60s and 70s were a very creative time for, let's say, a progressive way of seeing things. A lot of things. Civil rights came up.
Yes.
People started questioning that rather than casting down their eyes and putting up. Stokely Carmichael went down and faced those dogs. There was all that kind of stuff. All kinds of things happened. Voter rights, all kinds of things. The Vietnam thing. It was and now it just seems to be retrograde to my way of thinking in terms of, except I think there's something in the youth and there's something, as Bobby Dylan used to say, blowing in the wind.
I hope so.
Are you optimistic for the human prospect? Or is that too broad a question?
That's a good question. The way we continue to destroy the environment and the way we have trouble facing the treatment of animals. We raise animals in these...
It is unconscionable.
Enormous suffering we put them through. And most people,
particularly the farm animals.
Yes.
It is unconscionable.
It is. And
there's going to be an uprising against that.
You think so?
I think so. Did you ever be to one of those chicken places? Don't go. You'll be torn apart.
No, I know.
They are insane.
No, they're
in those cages.
They're in cages. They can't even move.
You can't move.
And the pigs are in the cage.
It should not be allowed. What is it? What is it? Some quarter profit or something? That's the thing.
You can raise more.
The animals should be wandering around in the meadow.
Even people who think it's all right to kill for animals for meat. I mean, to raise them in this horrendous suffering is a nightmare.
It should be. I think it's going to come front and center.
But it has taken so long, Harold, that we still haven't done anything about it.
Right.
And I try to talk to people about it, and they don't want to hear. And they say, I like my meat, They don't want to... I don't know.
I don't know. That's a little hard. You ever knew a fellow named... I think he was psychology. I'm not sure. Christopher Bird. Did you ever run into a guy named Christopher Bird? He was a psychologist. I think he was tied in with... who was the guy with the dolphins? But he was a thing in the 70s. He had a book he wrote, The Secret Life of Plants. And he had a thing where they had like a measurement of a plant, and it came up to be where it was measuring that when a plant is cut, it feels pain.
Well, that's a problem too.
Because we tend to think of the plants as being somehow lower. And there's a problem. We're against animals.
Well,
we eat plants, but the plants are part of it, and everything is interconnected.
It makes it hard to eat anything then. You have to become animals have nervous systems like ours.
Yeah, right. So that's
and they scream out when they're ready to go for slaughter.
Absolutely.
They can't stand. They go through crazy behavior.
But it's happening to plants also.
Well.
So it's further from us. So it's
if you're going to really be pure about it, I guess you just eat nuts and things that fruit that comes off.
That's a little tricky. You got the Jains in the Vedic thing where they just don't want to even step on the ground and there's no way to avoid it. It's existentially because we're all walking in a sea of bacteria, and bacteria is a form of life.
Right.
And so you'd have to be, even if you're a breatharian, you're killing. It's inevitable.
It's inevitable, but the suffering of the animals you could stop if a compassionate nation
I couldn't agree with you
would
more.
stop that. And it's so, you asked me about what do I feel about the human condition.
Not to mention human beings, maybe.
If
the way they're treating human beings, even though the human beings don't know
the way
it.
we're treating children,
It seems to me criminal.
it is. It's almost like a kind of child
Thank
abuse
you.
what we're putting children through with
Right.
all these pressures. They're making them hate life, homework that has no benefit.
I used to
get
feel
miserable.
that way about the irregular Latin verbs.
Yeah.
Did you know? I mean, do you know what I mean? It was like that. Or I was very embarrassed. I had to do the algebra. You had to do algebra?
Yeah, we did it.
What do we have to teach?
Well, I think
What
kids...
is it that we have to teach?
I think kids could learn a lot of what they learn in the first 12 grades in a year or so if you just...
Right.
Mostly we're drilling them stuff. They take the test, they pass. They memorize it
Right,
for the
take
test,
the
and they
test and
forget
pass,
it.
take
And
the
they
test
forget
and
it
pass.
immediately afterwards.
IQ tests, are you involved with testing at all?
Well,
The IQ tests and so forth, they have special IQ tests. They have Sanford Binet or something to measure IQ. Do you have much faith in the concept of IQ that is presented out?
I think
or what do you
that,
think
that's
about
been
that?
critical. I think we're getting away from that.
You do?
There are different kinds of intelligence. Howard
Absolutely.
Gardner has pointed that out.
Howard Gardner?
Yeah, he's
Okay.
pretty much busted up the idea of the monolithic IQ that I have an IQ that's higher than my neighbor's, or my neighbor has an IQ.
There is people do have a different ability to
well,
do
we all
something.
have so many different abilities.
Yeah.
Some
people are smarter than
I'm
others.
supposedly pretty good in, and I think a lot about, and I'm interested in.
You got through Harvard College.
Right, in philosophy and psychology. I didn't do too well in physics.
Yeah, right.
I don't think my level of cognitive capacity is really good in physics. I didn't have the love for it or the great interest for whatever reason, but we have our own special abilities. And then you even have people who are, we put such an emphasis on cognitive capacities in this life. Like I was thinking,
linear thinking?
Linear thinking.
Is it linear, cognitive, linear?
That's a
mathematics?
Yeah, it's a kind of non-creative thinking.
Marshall McLuhan used to say that he thought he was very creative.
Yeah.
I used to visit with him each spring. I could never get close.
Is that right?
What the Jewish call Hamish.
Is that
Couldn't
right?
get home. But he was really, he said the basic metaphor for organizing Western civilization was phonetic alphabet. Stringing things out linearly.
Linearly.
We're coming back to when we walk through the world, we're experiencing everything multisensorially rather than linear. We're not thinking well, anyway, I didn't want to get off on that.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It's just, it seems like there's a lot of struggles to get people to see what's happening to animals, for example.
Okay, that's an issue. Or to children.
And to children.
Or let's say to the Iraqi people,
you got
or the Vietnamese.
You're killing
empathy. You're back
the empathy.
To empathy. Yeah.
All these.
Empathy is a hugely
the Iraqi.
important thing,
yeah. The imagination is so curtailed. We're killing. You know, we talk about the soldiers coming home.
Yeah.
In that, but all the Iraqis, the Iraqi children and families, as if they're not human. We
that
can't.
Lancet study.
Yeah, we can't seem to get the American press or the media to even look at that, or people to consider that, or our leaders. There's, I guess you can't be totally pessimistic because people we have to assume that if we work, they will wake up. But just a pure compassion for other people, for animals, for children, for
got all these power
the world.
structures.
It's hard.
You would say
with
that, people have power. And that's really, Acton said it tends to corrupt, didn't he? It corrupts absolutely. But
corrupts,
power.
Absolute power.
So you got
corrupts absolutely.
Yeah. But power tends to corrupt. You could say maybe money tends to corrupt. I don't know.
That's true too.
Education maybe tends to. I don't know, the institutions and so forth. But I mean, there's all that kind of stuff is going on. So it's a little hard to know if the situation is going to change. James Joyce said, "History is a nightmare from which I'm attempting to awaken." Seems that way to me. I mean, it seems
I laugh because it seems so on target.
It does seem on target. Do you think there's a chance that we're awakening to maybe that
well, what do you?
We've been 200,000 years here as a species. Are we getting to a point where maybe we're overcoming some of the situation that we're going to have why is there so much power being exerted to do things by certain people, and the whole power? Are we ever going to have a liberated order, or is that something that's not possible by human nature? All kinds of people tell us human nature is such that it's insatiable need to have power over. They got these ideas of our human nature.
I think it's mostly created by our institutions.
I think so, yeah. And the technology.
And the technology is getting used in a way that closes people off. Like you take things that have been interesting to me, like kids love to walk around and explore, but now parents push them in strollers. You rarely see kids walking around exploring in a toddler's. Or the cell phones. You see people, walk down the street. They don't pay attention to the birds or the breezes. Even in the parks or even in the beach, in the beaches, they're on their cell phones. How people on the cell phone, their eyes go straight ahead, and they're not paying attention to the world. They're not taking it in. They're alienated from nature. It's like the cell phone is a very good device for insulating people from the natural world.
Do you think technology is in general?
In general,
we've had a march of technology.
It has. The TV is very seductive. It pulls kids in, keeps them indoors.
A lot of people thought the movie was wrong. The radio, if God meant you to fly, they would make an airplane.
The radio, at least you could use your imagination listening. You create the images, the scenes.
Marshall used to say that was a hot medium and it created linear thinking.
The radio.
It's linear.
Now it's it's verbal.
Yeah. It's audio,
But now it's just total. It's got total control of children's lives.
Right. Not only children, but the politicians and the people see the people as children.
Yeah.
There's an infantile. They're turning them into children, like to be put into a business plan or something.
Yes.
Or a thing. It's like that. Oh, the senior vice president. It's all structured that way.
And it rots the brain. It's killing their intelligence and. The video games, it keeps them in a world of plastic and metal, and it keeps them out of the rich natural world, which is really important. I think if we're going to save the planet, people have to be exposed to nature.
You think?
And they have to develop some ties to it. And if we just raise children indoors, as I mentioned lately, I've been battling artificial turf.
Yeah, that's AstroTurf.
Yeah, it's like kids are growing up in a...
Do you have that sign?
Oh, yeah.
Hold it up. There's a little sign you had at a demo, and we got to let them see your book, too.
Oh, okay.
This is the thing, no fake grass, right?
Yeah, could be.
Hold this up.
Could be interpreted in many ways.
Yeah, okay, yeah. This is not marijuana. Right? This is fake, this is
synthetic turf, yeah.
Synthetic turf, yeah.
Yeah, there's new brands of it. But the kids are growing up in an increasingly synthetic world now, all the time indoors, and now we're ripping up the soil and grass in our playing fields and putting in synthetic turf. They'll have a synthetic outdoors.
No fooling.
Oh,
they doing that?
They're on the New York City is on its way to installing synthetic turf in 79 parks.
Instead of the turf that's there?
Instead of the natural turf, they can get more games.
What's the rationale?
They get more games in, and get more organized sports play. Basically, it's the organized sports, so the kid doesn't get outside and sit under a tree or go out and play pickup games in the grass. It's
New York City, Manhattan's not a very good. Except we got beautiful Central Park, but it's not a very good candidate for nature. I mean, you got a couple of hawks flying around, but it's mostly cement and asphalt.
Right, and what little we have is going to be smothered over with the synthetic turf. It's already in process. This is going on nationwide. This is like, you remember the 1950s movie, The Blob, where it just
kind of,
a science fiction movie. This synthetic turf is like it's going everywhere. Every town is putting this in.
In a certain way, you could say, if you use the word synthetic, you could in a certain sense say technology is synthetic to a natural way that Rousseau might have said we lived in nature, and that all of these extensions of our consciousness to technology is a bane. A lot of people think that we are a bane on the world.
Well,
we got weapon systems now that can apparently destroy our whole species.
We've taken out almost all the fish in the ocean. Then technology enables us to do that. Now, you used to have to use your senses to fish.
Yeah.
Which I don't like killing fish.
Captain's courageous.
But you had to watch where the birds are, smell. A good fisherman could smell the
cod,
the salt, and use various senses. Which now it's it's all the sonar systems and the technology. They say the fish don't have a chance. They can pick them up through the technology.
Neither do the people.
Well, they're emptying the world of the fish, and the fish do. They do suffer from the ways we fish with nets that just sweep everything up, long lines with miles of line with millions of hooks.
Yeah, and now that comes off
hundreds of thousands
that comes
of
off a very long tenure. We've been here 200,000 years, and I have talked with a number of people. Barbara Ehrenreit's really good. She wrote a good book, and for most of our tenure on Earth, we were prey.
Well,
prey of the cats, leopards, and whatnot. And it was only been that we've become into ascendancy in the last relatively early period since the Neolithic and so forth.
Something's went wrong where we are destroying everything, bringing the Earth to its heels. And most biologists say there's a crisis that global warming finally emerged as people finally started paying attention to global warming. That took a long time. In fact, it may be rather late to remedy it. It took so long to bring the awareness to it.
But you use the word synthetic as though, and the only thing that could make anything synthetic, I guess, I mean, like spiders weave webs and beavers make dams. But what's a synthetic? It's essentially human. We are synthetic because we have a capability of extending our consciousness into the environment and making it different than in an Eden-like sense as a given, which was our lot when we were wandering on the Serengeti Plain 200,000 years ago. We were in touch, but we couldn't have known Einstein. We couldn't have known. They got a telescope now. It's going to take a picture of the Big Bang 13.7 billion years ago within a nanosecond.
Wow.
It's staggering. It's going to be about 2011. They got one that can do it within 200,000 years now.
So we'll know.
So that's an extension of our capability of knowing. We've come to know things. Is there any progress in knowing? Is it?
We know things in a very distant way, and we can do very incredibly destructive things. We can split the atom.
But we can also, and possibly we can.
Tremendous power.
Do you think there's possibly any? Do you think there's any purpose in the universe? Or any purpose to human existence, or is there anything good to be said for human beings and our mark on, like
these are
they've got
deep questions.
Is the internet a bad thing that is there?
On balance, I think it's bad.
You do.
I do.
You go that far.
I go that far.
I'm in communication.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and here we are on doing
television.
Something on television.
That's right. Here we are.
Yeah. So it's a mixed picture, but on balance, we can split the atom, and we can go back and discover things get knowledge on the internet.
Is knowledge bad? Should we be ignorant?
Good. But
they used to have a radio show. You're too young.
Yeah.
It pays to be ignorant.
Well,
do you remember that?
There's something to it.
It pays to be ignorant, to be dumb, to be dumb, to be ignorant. It pays to be ignorant, just like me. They had a thing where they'd ask silly jokes.
But people will walk through the park.
There is an anti-intellectual bias in a lot of people.
Right, there is. But people have all this information, and they walk through the park, and they watch a tree getting cut down, and they won't object.
Even a stately tree.
A big, mature tree, a stately tree, they won't object.
They cut those virgin forests out in the West Coast. Is that sin?
And people eat meat that comes from an animal that suffered unbearably.
Why does the animal have to suffer?
Well, it's a production system.
Capitalism.
That's a large part of it.
You think a lot of it has to do with economic theory and the way we organize
things? A lot of it probably has to do with it's cheaper to raise animals in the way that crowding them in. You can raise more if you crowd them into cages than if you let them roam outside. That's more expensive if you let them roam freely.
Could we say the same thing about people?
It's cheaper.
That we submit them to school.
To test. It's easier to test kids and demand that they get better scores than it is
like
to
animals in a cage.
Than it is. Well, they are.
You know what I mean? What I'm saying?
Yeah.
I've got a lot of people who think of schools as a minimal security correctional
training them to get ready for prisons.
Training them to get ready for the prisons, or training to get ready for fascist corporate America. With the institutions, they're all they're not creative,
right,
and that sort of thing.
Right.
So I don't know, is it, and we got weapon systems now with outdated if creativity and some sort of a thing we've been talking about, really human values and so forth, are not in the saddle, and if there's an unleashing of the destruction, apparently we have the ability for the first time to destroy our whole species with weapon systems, and you could very easily see that's the way we're heading. They're talking about bunker-busting bombs in Iran now.
Really?
Yeah, atomic tipped. Mr. Kissinger wrote that book in 1954 about tactical nuclear weapons,
right.
And they're talking now because Iran is such a threat, and you know it could trigger off a thing where they could, and if the weapons were unleashed, unlike the Second World War is recent,
right.
Apparently they can only model it, but apparently there's the ability now, particularly germ things, where we have the ability now to destroy every single human being in the world, with the weapons could be set off by one person. That signals something existential, doesn't it? Or does it?
It's very frightening.
You do. Is there an adverse side to that destructive scenario that might be something like
the humans are
liberation? Maybe we're going to get a system where instead of the power plays and the things that we've had, the institutions that we've had out of all of history, that we'll have a liberated order,
well,
or a system where everybody would be liberated to realize their full potential within a context, rather than all the power plays and the things that are being done now, and the institutions which are outdated.
Yeah, these are very large questions. I think if
you used to do philosophy.
Well, I try. I'm not so good. I think if you go back to where we began with children.
Let's let them see the book. Do you mind if I put up the way the book?
Thank you.
That's good. Now go ahead. Go, keep talking. I'm just let them see the book.
Go back to where we started the conversation with in terms of potential. I think you have grandchildren, and
I got 4 grandchildren.
4 children, and
I just assume these clowns didn't blow it all up.
Right, and they're so enjoyable to you, and if people can appreciate the wonders of childhood.
Look at that. Look at that little part.
Sounds romantic. It's supposed to be a father who's letting the child explore and just hanging back to make sure everything's safe, but letting the child has what I call an unobtrusive presence.
Right.
Being present for the sake of the child's
here
safety.
You got to quote Howard Gardner.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, okay, good. That's good to know. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, being there for the sake of the child's safety.
And while we're doing it, let's let them know this. You've edited this, right?
Yeah, this is it's a struggling journal. It's very good. We try to promote the nurturing of the whole child, and we oppose the testing, and the focus strictly on the intellect. We got to realize children are social beings.
Sure.
Creative beings, emotional beings.
That's a beautiful picture.
Studying
you can sit there for an hour studying
the flowers.
The flower.
That's what childhood is, and
that's what life should be.
That's right.
No, it should be. Why couldn't people?
So, and answer your question,
people keep the same kind.
Maybe we can get some inspiration from children.
Absolutely,
in terms of,
I think so. Yeah.
If you want to think big and save the human species and save the planet, maybe like that old saying, the children will lead the way. Maybe you can take inspiration from.
The good book says that. The Bible says that, I think.
I think it does. I'm not much of a religious scholar.
I'm not either. But I think it does.
But I think others have said that.
I think as I try to.
I think it's in ancient Chinese philosophy, and I've reading some Tao. I keep reading the Taoism. There's wise man is like a child. I think it's part of the ancient. Wisdom.
I think you might be right on that. You could do a lot worse in letting I think that way when it starts coming to making the computer work. The little kid, they can make the computer jump like, they can make it dance like Fred Astaire. They're better with it. And they pick it up by osmosis, it seems. And you don't have to teach children to talk.
No, you don't.
That's an interesting thing.
Oh, it's very interesting. In fact, that's the most solid evidence against the need for testing and constant adult teaching.
Yes.
Adults generally assume if a child is going to learn something, the adult has to teach it. Yet the Chomsky revolution has made it very clear that children master an incredibly complex, hidden, abstract grammar. It's like they're performing analytic geometry at 5 in terms of their mastery of syntax. And they do it spontaneously with no teaching, no formal tutelage. And if they need to pick up a second language, they do that too. They can pick up
they've picked up the computer.
They can pick up the computer. The computer is nothing. This language development of language.
But they did it by osmosis. It seems.
Right.
They all know
they
the
have
Zorch
some
connects to the
capacities,
Zilch, and it's very complicated.
Right. They have some capacities that the linguistic one is marvelous. I mean, how the child can pick up a language where adults struggle with a second language, but kids can pick up one or two or three. Parents have had they have the experience of trying to they come from a Latin American country and they come to the United States and they struggle. They take night classes. They struggle to learn English, and their kid is picking it up off the streets with no instruction, just by playing with other kids, as if it were nothing. So there is this amazing capacity. And so when people say that, assume that if you have to teach everything else a kid won't learn, you have to motivate them. This evidence children have a creative power that's immense, and you can point to the linguistic capacities in childhood.
And that they have a curiosity.
The curiosity, you want to preserve it,
Keep the curiosity alive.
Keep it alive.
Because that's what matters. Not a certain kind of thing you have to know. No. And they're trying to get some sort of a test in order to get all these structural things. Another thing we've got to mention, sorry, it's too interesting, but your life, you're too interesting. That's the problem. And your subject area is too interesting. But the thing is, you're very interested in open emissions. And the thing, and we got some photographs. I don't know if we can get them up or not. Or do we have them?
What we have
there? But you were talking about the very rich tradition they had at the City University and in general.
1960.
Okay, let me hold these up, and these are just some photographs.
These are the 1999 open admissions.
And if you can come in, Willie, on this
ceremony.
Is in support of the concept of
open admissions.
We want to talk to that.
I organized that. When we came in 1969, the City University. This is 99.
Yeah, this is 99.
In 16, this was the 30th anniversary.
Right. Okay.
In 69, at that time the university was almost entirely white. The student body.
Right.
And there was a student takeover where I teach at City College.
They took over all the university. It was a great and glorious time.
I came a year later, but they in 70 I came to City College. In 69, and as a result of the takeovers and the student strikes, there began an open admissions policy.
Yeah, at City University.
At the City University, which opened the doors of the City University widely, most to poorer students and people of color.
Yeah, it's going to open to everybody.
A lot of people of color primarily took advantage of it.
This young man is thanking the people from 1969.
That's right.
That's good. We should make cross-generational contacts like that. Yeah,
right, and it's kind of nice to see going way back. They know their history.
Yeah.
It was 30 years later, but the kid just drew, the student, I'm sorry.
To the 69 fighters, we love
you all.
They just
drew that.
Thanks.
They just drew that.
That's great. See, spontaneous.
It's
like
spontaneous.
A kid on the beach, right?
Yeah, because the students today have so little history, they say, but the activists realize their history.
I think 1970 is going to be seen as year one in the fullness of time, with reasons we can't go into here. But what's this picture?
That's the gathering to indicate that there was great interest in open admissions and preserving it. This was the year that a knife was put into open admissions. The Board of Trustees, under the appointees primarily of Pataki and Giuliani, banned remedial courses. They put in new standards, new testing policies, which didn't predict anything about college success. The tests are not valid tests, yet they discriminate against people of color, and those tests have been ruining open admissions. And just last week, the university announced a policy where they're going to raise the cutoff scores. Apparently, the university is still not middle class enough. They've changed it to becoming more middle class, but they want it wider and more middle class yet. It seems to be the motive.
White bread. Yeah, well, that's the thing. And they were going to make it available to everybody.
Well, now,
and education should be available.
Here's some of the kids at the ceremony. It should be open to everybody who wants a shot.
It should be open to everybody.
And if you didn't have a boy or girl didn't have a good education earlier on because they were born poor, give them a chance. My gosh. And they've proven if they've given chances, they can succeed.
Yeah, that's the thing I'm really interested in. I got stuff on my site about that. And I like the idea of people being able to be free. What do you think about the internet And the existence, I see it now. I see it in positive terms. I
You
happen
do.
to be a technophile.
You're more.
I like technology.
You're more a
so.
technophile.
Yeah, I like Fuller and McLuhan.
I'm
and
a
all
technophobe, I
that.
guess.
Okay, that's good. Whatever. One good thing is a lot of different kinds of ways of seeing things.
I don't
but here,
think that's
it's like I just see the university. It's all specialized rather than being comprehensive. There are no academic disciplines in reality. They break it all down. Bucky Fuller said they set up graduate schools, the pirates that run the world. They set them up deliberately to get the best minds so specialized out on something they wouldn't think about the whole and become a threat.
He could think about the whole. But
he thought about the threat.
Do you worry that now classrooms are going to be more on the internet and be distance learning?
I don't worry at all. I think it's a great and liberating thing. I see it because I don't see the universities as being measuring up to what's needed.
Right.
And so forth. They're places, mostly people are getting a certificate that's going to get them a chance to eat. It's all a matter of passing tests, so you'll become an outer-directed person.
What do you think of...
But the thing I'm saying is the Internet is like an autodidactic university.
Well, it is.
You're going to have the best minds. The wiki thing that's coming,
well, what do you think?
You're going to have the best minds there, and you're not going to have anybody there telling you. Anybody will be able to get educated.
And
do you think?
that's
so open admissions, there's no admissions.
But what
Everybody's got admission by the computer.
But if you go, if you're wealthier, you go to a college where you'll have personal contact with a teacher.
You're going to make social contacts with people that are
but personal contact with a teacher.
Build your Rolodex up so you can make out on Wall Street.
But there is something to be said, don't you think, for the human interaction that is going to be missing in the in the education of the future?
I suppose so. I suppose so. But I think that the idea, they got a $100 computer now they're going to make available to kids in Zimbabwe so that they can touch into it. And I don't know. I just think there's something positive about that. And then I think we're finally going to, I don't want to go into my thing, but I think we're getting down to where we're going to be transcending scarcity. We can apply, we can build for everybody. And I think we're going to be able to have a situation where instead of everybody being a class-based wage slave, everything, the template being set by people who have control over assumed scarce resources, we're going to transcend that. And we're going to have situations where the civil society of people coming together because they want to, not because they have to follow some dictate about how they're going to build a power base in the world.
You see
in order
great
to survive.
possibilities.
Well, it's a countervailing notion to like a liberation.
I see.
I think we need Frederick Douglass. I think we live in a big slave system. We're still enslaved. It's all materialistic, money-oriented slavery now.
I agree with that part, but I'm much more wary of technology. I think it's alienating us from nature and from each other. So I'm worried that we're going to know what's on the internet, but as I say, we're not going to pay attention.
But if we're not caught up in the power,
they're tearing up the soil and the trees down the street. We're not.
Don't want them to do that.
No,
we don't want to put.
But if people are so involved in they don't care. They're home on TV or the internet.
I'm sorry, we've run out of this. Is the beginning of a wonderful friendship, like they say at the end of Casablanca. It's great. We have to talk more and more. Welcome to MNN. We're trying to get some thoughts here. I think it's like a university kind of thing here. Thanks a lot.
Stimulating.
Your pleasure to have the perceptions. A really good guy. Bill Crain, psychology professor. He's got the good take on the human condition, and thanks a lot for coming in and for all your good work.
Thank you very much. It was
really good talking to you.
Very good talking to you.
Coming back again tomorrow. Tomorrow there will be a program we did 10 to 15.